back to Bane of Morgoth Miniatures. Today we're going to be continuing on our Elephant Luxodon Warrior here. The freehand we did last week. As promised, the little freehand, which, all things considered, I think turned out pretty well and pretty close to the other one. Today, we're going to embark on a little bit different of a journey. We're going to do a technique that we haven't done on, I think, either of the models I've done so far, and that is stippling. And the idea behind stippling is, let's break it down. You get a little bit of paint on the tip of your brush, and you jab the model. That's it. We did it. You don't want to have too much on your brush. You want to make sure there's a balance to this, or else you are going to end up just kind of painting. So just like dry brushing, it's seeing how much of your expensive paint you can waste. But oftentimes in miniature painting, our goal is to aim for texture, and we're really fighting to make sure our models don't look bland and maybe too polished. And stippling is one way we can aim and get that texture. So I kind of did a little bit of black in with my green here, because this will be where I'm going to focus a lot of my shadows. This is going to be maybe a little bit seizure inducing as we work through this. And just like dry brushing, I'm trying to make sure I have the right amount of paint on my brush. And with enough practice, you kind of don't test it anymore. You can kind of think about it. If you ever want to test it, you can test it on a glove or on your hand if you don't care about the sensory stuff. I just don't like having painful hands because my wife will ask me 20 questions about them. And she'll always think it's a scab or something. So I tend to wear a glove just to avoid those random dinner conversations. Although they can be fun if you pick a really wild color too. Or if you're feeling really froggy and controversial, maybe just draw a little scab on yourself. Then you have something to talk about and you can practice being a movie effects artist all in one. With stippling, your overall goal of the first layer is to make sure there's just enough coverage and really pinpointing in those shadows. Once again, we did the fun undercolors because I want those fun undercolors in there. So I'm going to leave some of them available as we work through this. So we see we're getting a green coat, but we're not there yet. And another thing that stippling does that, very similar to this, is this kind of striping, is it does leave a remnant behind. And that remnant shines through and kind of helps with the cohesion of the entire process and the project here. Once again, I have a kind of a druidic cleric kind of character being built here. Now on this random little piece, I could opt for a smaller brush. This little thing that runs under here. I could opt for a smaller brush. But in my life and in my painting, often laziness prevails. And it will here and now. I contemplated this center chest plate and this back of what it actually is, but it looks like it's a cuirass that bends and comes out. So I don't think it's part of this. So I'm going to not do that. I'm going to avoid that and just make sure I get some good shadows in the right recesses. I haven't decided yet, but I might come back along this and and add in some washes into the recesses just to really punch some of the different spacing in this model. You don't want a surface to read completely bland when there's texture, especially when we're trying to create texture. We don't want that at all. But I do want a bit more of a battle-worn look on Intaru Gresh's, this model's armor. Intaru Gresh is a, I don't know, kind of Cajun, kind of over-the-top voice I do for him. He, I think, by far is my player's favorite NPC. He was meant to be kind of a one-off thing, and they just kept coming back to him. And he's now a little bit of their patron, a little bit of their shop, a little bit of their quest giver. But Intaru Gresh talks like this, and he loves the opportunity to help out those around him. And I think he's a really kind of an enjoyable character who just is all about helping his city to become the best that it can be. Now that underlayer just help to darken down some of our shadowy portions. And this is going to establish more of our actual base layer color. But it's maybe hard to tell, but you can see there's the texture growing in these spaces, and maybe I'm being a little heavy-handed with this. I'm not quite getting the texture on the front side that I am on the back. But now that we've established kind of a base color, we can start kind of penciling in, as it were, where our highlights are going to be. The question is, should I move down to a smaller brush? Probably is the answer. And I think it's important, and I'm sure I talk about this all the time. I don't go back and rewatch my videos an extensive amount. But there is a nature of, I want you to realize that even people that paint a good deal don't go in with a perfect plan every time and have all the answers. A lot of painting is problem solving on the fly. And that may be choosing the brush you think is going to be right. Oh, a small sad moment. Green brush, green tip has been retired. And now we are on to orange tip, my new razor sharp brush. Very exciting. That's how you know you're a nerd, when you get excited about a new brush. As you begin your painting journey, you'll find that, where all of a sudden you find the new brush, and old brush, chop liver. Now I want to make sure I start getting in portions of this. So my second brush has become the third brush in the line, and now he is good for stabbing. Important. When you start stippling, you are going to kill brushes. This will kill brushes, okay? Do not do this with a brush you even remotely care about. This is a brush that would call you in the middle of the night and you'd be like, how'd you get this number? That's this kind of brush, not a one you actually pick the number up for. So right now what I'm doing is I'm mapping out my highest highlight. I don't think I want to go brighter than this green. So I'm mapping out where this highest highlight is going to land. And then I'll do a 50-50 to blend it back. I got a little crazy there. A 50-50 to blend it back into its surrounding cloth. This will give me both a blend and a texture all in one. And save me from hours of glazing. because that is for some people, but for me and my 20-some minute videos on YouTube, it ain't for me. You can see there's getting some of that texture in there. It changes it from like brush strokes to points. If you're familiar with the art style of pointillism, this is your crash course into that to some degree. But instead of drawing shapes, we're just mapping out pre-existing three-dimensional shapes. Another thing that I've often enjoyed when it comes to stippling versus dry brushing, oftentimes people ask me, what's the difference and why? When do you use one versus the other? Is one technique the better or the worse? In other words, what's that stippling all about, you know? What's it all about? And my best understanding of it, and what I think I would communicate to people, is your goal with stippling is twofold. One, it's to create texture. And the other idea is that you want to be using this on the enemy of dry brushing. And what's the enemy of dry brushing, everyone? Say it with me. Flat surfaces. If you try and dry brush on a flat surface, like a lot of this, you're just going to get streaky lines and you're really not going to touch anywhere and get texture. You're just going to get a mass of paint. And hopefully that's not what I'm doing here. Hopefully I'm creating some interesting shapes as I go through. But stippling, then, is the other paint waster. It creates a lot of dry spaces and wasted paint on your palette. But what it helps with is creating depth on smooth surfaces. Now this cloak has a good bit of ruffles and other things going on with it, but it still helps to really solidify where those high and lows are. And you kind of get to map out what you want to be the highs and the lows as well. All right, let's see if we can't get some of this on the front. Wow, do I get a gold star today for actually keeping it in focus? Maybe. Maybe I'm actually doing the YouTube now. Call your mom, get the camera, it's exciting. It is always interesting talking freeform into a camera for 20 minutes while you jab a model with your paintbrush and make jokes that you're 30% sure are landing because it's just the overflow of your brain. But there's something fun in it. All right, so now we're going to pick a middle color, which is very complexly done, where we grab a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and we schmutz it together until we say those look about the middle. That's the good thing with stippling, is eventually if you do your work right, you should get some level of blend in that space. And instead of it being this smooth, crisp blend, that takes hours of glazing to get to. We're at 15 minutes, and the first 3 minutes of it was me yapping about nothing. So we can start to get some not super smooth blends, but we start to get some cleaner transitions with a ton of texture. And you can get really crazy here. You can do 1 and 2 and then a step in the middle, or you can do 1, 2, 3 and a step between those makes 5, and another one and another one, and you can keep going down, and you can keep making passes back at this exact same thing, like a very desperate person at a bar and thinking he's found the one, but he really hasn't. He's just found someone that needs him to leave them alone. But in this case, as opposed to that case, persistence will find us with nice, smooth blends and a coloration that really tells a bit more story than I put green on his cloak and now it is more green or less green. Like, that's one way of going about it, but this is the next way of making sure we've created a little more interest in these shadows. And stippling also keeps you from making any jumps too quickly, because it's a process, and it's a multi-tiered process as well. I don't think I ever really got bright enough on my front side here. Go back through and brighten some of this up. Excuse me. And then we're going to mix in some of those colors as well. And now, the piece de resistance. After we've stippled kind of a generic shape to things, I think what I'm going to do here is come in with the pointy brush. Dun dun dun. Make sure it's nice and wet. Get myself some of the highest highlight. And I'm just going to catch my high points here. And what I want to do is I want to do some scratches on those high points. Really just solidify in that this is a fabric, and that there is truly texture here. But I want to make sure my brush strokes are light and thin. Or else I could very quickly lose all the stippling work I've done. Now we get to listen to me breathe. Very exciting work here now. Now we're getting some sharper lines coming out of this. I think it's really gonna shine on these pieces up here. If I choose one edge to be the focal edge here. One of the reasons I'm doing this is because these strips up here were not interacting the way I want them to. So I'm going to force some contrast into them. So another thing is that in painting, oftentimes you're switching techniques as you go to reinforce the visual that you're attempting to reinforce. Another thing that's important is you'll see painters that have 30 different blues and 30 different greens and 100 different reds and 19 different tools that they use for each and every step of everything. Don't get bogged down in that, especially in the beginning of your painting journey. Make sure you are focused on learning techniques and not acquiring things. Because if you have 100 tools and you don't know how to use any of them, you're never going to use any of them. You're going to fall back into, okay, I have this brush and I know how to use this brush in these paints. And that's what you're going to do. I highly suggest you don't try and learn how every single component works at all at the same time. Build on it. Start a foundation of paints and brushes, and then slowly but surely add effects paints and textures and other things that go into it. And you can get textures and all of these things by techniques just like this. You can see as we've worked through, his cloak is already starting to look not so bland or just green, but rather there's textures. I'm going to try and clean up the front here a little bit because I'm bored by it, and that doesn't make me happy because it's the front of the model. When the back of the model looks better than the front of the model, that's not a good thing to be thinking. So I want to make sure those color jumps are visible. And exciting. And paint is always going to dry just a little bit duller than it was when it's wet. I think we know that things that are wet are often have a sheen that dry will not have. Now we've established a little more interest in the front, I don't want to use my very nice brush for washes. So I'm going to set that off to the side. I'm going to grab my secondary brush, and I'm going to grab a green wash. Now, washes have the tendency to be very overpowering. So dilution of washes is very important so that they do not completely control what we're doing. A big water drop there, that's nice. So we see the difference between this green that I'm making here and that green is just, actually, maybe you can't. Yeah, you can, there you go. So I need to make sure that I don't have a ton on there, because I want this to drop just into the recesses, and I want it to make shadows for me. So as always, if it gets a little over the top, there's too much, you can always jump back into water, a little watered thing here, and kind of feather it out. And that feathering is a very important practice. You want to make sure you take hold of that. Let's go back to our bigger stuff on the back, because I want to start getting in underneath here is where I want those greens to fall. I want under there to feel like there's some shadow happening in this space. Now, contrast paint, as you work with it, takes much longer to dry. Its dry time is far longer. So once I've established some things, I need to let it dry. And if I futz around with it too much, I'm going to end up with it getting splotchy, and that is not what you want. Splotchy paint is not good paint. So right now I'm working quick because I want to get in some of this shadow work. I'm just picking under that armor. Now I went full octane unleaded there. I I didn't water it down at all because I know I'm coming back with a wet brush right away to really soften that up. But you can see it gives that shadow and that sheen. And I really wanted to just follow right along the armor here and give it the whole effect along this armor. I'm not a big cover everything in contrast person. I like it a lot for shadows. That's where my brain says, oh yeah, that's where you belong. There are speed painting techniques that you just wash the heck out of that bad boy, and that's fine. If that's your cup of tea, not hating on it, just ain't for me. That's really what it is. This green also makes a nice shadow for all of these places. It's going to add some life to those shadows. But always feathering in every portion you do. Oh, I'm really liking how that's going, so I'm just going to keep rolling on it, actually. Back to the note of sometimes artists that paint a lot still don't know exactly how it's going to feel and move when they're working on it. This is one of those moments. This green really started to have some pizzazz, and I said, well, in essence, yes, queen, you go. Go off, short king. Is that what people say nowadays? Is that what it is? Yeah, we'll go with that. Except in Targresh is a 7-foot tall elephant, so it's more like go off, giant pachyderm. Anyway, I digress into madness. But here we have some good things going. I lost some highlight throughout the process, so I'll just bring it back. Run it back. But now I want to be careful that I'm not messing around with where the other contrast is drying. These thin layers, especially these watered down layers, will dry a little bit faster, but you don't want to go crazy. And that's the green. Thank you so much for watching. I hope my ramblings of a madman are enjoyable and that you learned something today, whether about life or about painting. All right, have a good night. Bye.